Martin Heidegger, the most original and one of the most influential philosophers in 2000 years, and a Nazi. How is it possible to square these two things? Is it possible? Heidegger, born in southern Germany in 1889, wrote his seminal text, Being and Time, in 1927 and was immediately propelled to philosophical fame. He was taught by the founder of phenomenology, Edmund Husserl, who had written that philosophers needed to go back to the things themselves. Heidegger agreed philosophy had for too long overlooked the most important issue. Philosophers had forgotten to ask what it is to be. In the opening pages of Being and Time, Heidegger writes, "Our aim in the following treatise is to work out the question of the sense of being, and to do so concretely. The human way of being is different to that of a cat's way of being in that humans have lives to lead. Unlike other animals driven by simple desires, humans have to make existential choices, thoughtful decisions about what we should do. And neither are we just Homo sapiens. Homo sapien might describe our physical makeup, but it doesn't get to the essence or the truth about what it is to be human. And every Homo sapien leads their lives in very different ways. This is a problem philosophers have wrestled with for thousands of years. How do we understand human essence? If we can work out what it is to be, then we might be able to theorise better ways of living. Importantly for Heidegger, the human way of being has no fixed meaning or essence. Ultimately, human beings are unique in that they must interpret themselves. But instead of realising this very simple point, philosophers have taken to creating free-floating constructions, grand metaphysical systems, theories of politics, the social world, of morality and ethics. Heidegger singles out Descartes as illustrative of this trend. Descartes asked how it is we can really know the external world. He believed that knowledge we come to using our minds was more dependable than knowledge we come to using our senses. The senses, he argued, can trick us. The senses may lead us to believe that the sun is closer than it is. It's reason that tells us otherwise. Descartes uses the example of a ball of wax in front of the fire. He writes, "It has been taken quite freshly from the hive, and it has not yet lost the sweetness of the honey which it contains. It still retains somewhat of the odour of the flowers from which it has been culled. Its colour, its figure, its size are apparent. It is hard, cold, easily handled, and if you strike it with the finger, it will emit a sound." Yet, as it melts under the fire, Descartes writes that the taste is exhaled, the smell evaporates, the colour alters, the figure is destroyed, the size increases, it becomes liquid, it heats, scarcely can one handle it, and when one strikes it, no sound is emitted. Does the wax remain after this change? We must confess that it remains. None would judge otherwise. For Descartes, to understand how the wax is the same wax requires reason, and this is proof as to why reason is more powerful than empiricism. But Heidegger criticises philosophers who think of humans as being detached from the world, looking at objects and problems as if they were independent of human interaction. Descartes looks at the wax as an object to be considered, what Heidegger calls present at hand, but human beings are thrown into the world, and being experiences a traditional way of interpreting itself. It is surrounded by tools and objects, others and language and discourse, all of which have been handed down and continually modified by previous generations. So first of all, rather than being rational or empirical, being is being in the world. Descartes thinks about the being, but not the in. Heidegger calls this being in or being there Dasein. If Dasein is being in the world, then it must have a care for the world in some way. Dasein is interested in something, whether it's food or philosophy or wax or music or water. What Descartes and other philosophers haven't considered is another type of object, an object that is not just present at hand, like the ball of wax to be considered and studied, but ready to hand, like a hammer or a pen. Looking at objects as if they were just present to hand is a theoretical approach. You can contemplate the wax and the hammer, its size, its use, its smell, its qualities, but when you use an object, it becomes something different. I don't contemplate the philosophical or theoretical properties of a pen every time I use it. Heidegger writes that the less we just stare at the hammer thing, and the more we seize hold of it and use it, the more primordial does our relationship to it become, and the more unveiledly is it encountered as that which it is, as equipment. When we consider the world in this way, we realise that any attempt to theorise single entities like wax or a hammer makes no sense without exploring the equipmental totality in which the object exists. The hammer doesn't make sense without nails, wood, tables, chairs, other people to sit in those chairs, other people who want to chop wood. When we hammer, we don't think about the hammer. Our moment of being is caught up in this vast network of worldliness. Heidegger builds upon this with simple concepts like state of mind, through which we experience this worldliness. We always have a mood, and our moods always illuminate different objects or people as ready or present at hand. Hunger illuminates food, fear has different forms that illuminate that which we are afraid of. On top of this, we must always have a way of understanding these things. And the intelligibility of being in the world, Heidegger writes, expresses itself as discourse. Rather than being just language, discourse is the site of all meaning, the totality of significations. Discourse is the way we understand the web of objects and others we come across in the world. What we start to see as we progress through being and time is a patchwork of experiences that make up Dasein's constitution. But how is Dasein to understand itself when presented with all these different phenomena? How is it possible that we make sense of the world together and live individual lives? If a hammer always hammers nails, if fear is always fear of danger, if discourse is always something we are thrown into, how is it that we are each unique? Heidegger says that the normal way of living is in the everydayness of these phenomena, as presented by others, what Heidegger calls the dictatorship of das Man, the they. He writes that these others, moreover, are not definite others. On the contrary, any other can represent them. The who is not this one, not that one, not oneself, not some people, and not the sum of all of them. The who is the neuter, the they. This is the averaged out, tedious and utilitarian reckoning and balancing of claims presented to us by the other. Dasein loses itself in the average everydayness of the they, the mindless small talk, being told the right way to do things, political correctness. To live authentically, though, is to seize upon one's own possibilities. This is the source of individuality, of creativity. We are most free when we most realise our own finitude. We must step away from the they, or else we live like automatons. The prominent Heideggerian Richard Dreyfuss has interpreted this as arguing that when we are presented with things in their worldliness, others, moods, tools, language, we are presented with a world that's not ours. We have no original contributions of our own. Inauthenticity is a kind of nothingness. Authenticity, on the other hand, adds something new to the world. To some, Heidegger is a platitudinal thinker, someone who states the obvious. Rudolf Carnap, for example, described Heidegger as making nonsensical pseudo-propositions. To others, though, Heidegger is a genius who has described the world in a simple way no one has thought to do in 2,000 years. And his influence in the 20th century is huge. What many have commented on is how unique a view he has of the world, and how reading his view can completely change your own perception of how we all think about our surroundings. He provides almost a map, a blueprint, that others have drawn upon in fields from education to technology. The existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre was said to have responded to reading Being and Time with a sense of shock, but the question of his Nazism still looms. And it's a big question. How is it possible for someone so widely recognised as being a genius to turn to National Socialism? And it's something I'll have to return to in part 2. If you like these videos and would like to support me making more, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook by clicking the links in the description below. You can like this video and subscribe to the Then and Now channel to see more. And if you're feeling really generous, you can pledge as little as $1 towards the creation of each new video. You can click here to find out more. Thank you.